Hello and welcome to the TLS module. We're going to cover how Apigee Edge supports TLS and several ways you can protect your backend servers. TLS is supported in public as well as private cloud environments. You can enable one-way and two-way TLS. One-way TLS is where the client verifies the server, and two-way TLS has mutual authentication between the client and the server. TLS encrypts the URL, headers, query parameters, HTTP verb, and the payload. Only the destination server and payload size is known. So TLS encrypts data in motion, but not at rest. Therefore, you should not include passwords in the query parameters. Additionally, you shouldn't send any sensitive data in the URI. The reason is that URIs are typically stored in server logs, and users can bookmark them in their browser history. So sensitive data should be sent in the payload or in a header. One-way and two-way TLS is supported between the client and Apigee Edge, and between Apigee and the backend server. The way this is supported is with key stores and trust stores. Key stores hold all the server certificates that are presented to the client when it makes a secure connection. The key store is required for one-way TLS. The trust store is also hosted on the server, and it holds the certificates that a client must present to the server after the client has validated the server certificate. Let's look at a one-way TLS example. The first step is that the client requests access to a protected resource. Next, the server presents the certificate to the client. The client verifies the certificate. Finally, the secure connection is established provided that all of the previous steps succeeded. Now let's look at a two-way TLS example. The first three steps are the same as one-way TLS. So we'll start at step 4, where the client presents its certificate to the server. The server verifies the client's certificate. And finally, if all the previous steps succeeded, then a secure connection is established between the client and the server. So how do you configure TLS between the client and Apigee Edge? First, you have to create a server key store, and then you have to create the trust store for two-way TLS. Then you create the virtual host to include the key store and the trust store. Now let's discuss securing your backend server. Generally, you want to prevent unauthorized access to your backend server, and you want Apigee Edge to be your front door. Typically, customers accomplish this by using a combination of secure credentials, OAuth 2.0, IP whitelisting, and two-way TLS. Implementing two-way TLS from Apigee Edge to the backend server will require several steps. First, you need to generate or obtain a public certificate, and then you need to create a key store on Edge with the certificate and the private key. Next, you should create a trust store that contains all of the trusted certificates. And finally, you have to configure the target endpoint. Notice that the target server has a reference to the key store and the trust store. Now, even though you have TLS enabled, an Apigee developer can see sensitive data included in the request via the Apigee Edge trace tool. In this case, you still need to hide this data from your internal developer, and you can accomplish this with data masking. Data masking can block sensitive data in XML and JSON payloads, as well as in flow variables. These masks can be configured with the Apigee Management API. How you set up the data mask depends on what type of data you're trying to mask. For XML payloads, you send an XPath. For JSON, you use JSONPath. And for flow variables, you send the name of the flow variable, and that includes headers and query parameters. Now you understand how Apigee supports one-way and two-way TLS. You also understand the required steps to configure one-way and two-way TLS between the client and Apigee to the backend server. You also know how to configure a data mask to prevent unauthorized access to sensitive data within the trace tool. If you have any additional questions, please post them on our community and review our documentation for more details. Thanks for watching.